Bungie had just finished one of the most successful shooter franchises in console history. Halo was done, the contract was fulfilled, the studio was free, and what they built next was the most ambitious project in their history. A shared world shooter, a game designed to last 10 years, a universe built from scratch. It didn't go exactly to plan. This is the story of Destiny. In 2010, Bungie signed a 10-year publishing deal with Activision worth a reported $500 million. The agreement covered 4 mainline Destiny games and 4 expansion packs across a decade. That number wasn't just a budget, it was a mandate. Destiny was internally codenamed Tiger during development. The pitch was specific. A first-person shooter with the accessibility of Halo, layered with RPG progression systems, set inside a shared persistent world. 3 player classes were designed from the ground up. Titan, heavily armored, defensive, melee focused. Hunter, agile, precision based, mobile. Warlock, ability driven, power focused, arcane. Each class had 2 subclasses at launch, each built around an elemental damage type, solar, arc or void, with unique super ability as the centerpiece. The shared world structure worked like this. Players existed in the same battle zones simultaneously. Up to 16 players visible in open world areas. Strikes were 3-player match-made missions. Raids were 6-player structured encounters with no matchmaking, requiring coordinated fire teams. The loot system was built around light level, a combined stat average across equipped gear that determined access to higher tier content. Legendary and exotic gear sat at the top of the rarity ladder, each exotic carrying a unique perk, unavailable anywhere else. For players arriving in September 2014, the first step onto the Cosmodrome in Old Russia felt like something genuinely new. A shooter that felt like Halo, a world that felt alive, a progression system that gave every session a purpose. But within weeks, the cracks appeared. Destiny launched to the 9.5 million registered players in its first 3 days, and immediately divided every one of them. Destiny's launch on September 9, 2014 was one of the most anticipated in console history, and one of the most immediately controversial. The game shipped across PS3, PS4, Xbox 360 and Xbox One simultaneously. First day sales reached $325 million globally. Within 3 days, 9.5 million registered players. But the campaign ran approximately 6 hours. The endgame outside of the Vault of Glass raid was thin. Story content was locked behind a companion app called Grimoire. Lore that explained the worlds existed entirely outside the game itself, readable only on a phone or website. The content structure at launch worked as follows. Story missions across Earth, Moon, Venus and Mars, completable in a single setting. 3-player strikes for repeatable PvE content. Crucible PvP across several modes. The Vault of Glass, a 6-player raid releasing 2 weeks after launch, which became the most praised content in the game. The Vault of Glass was genuinely exceptional, mechanically complex, communication dependent, with encounters that required teams to discover solutions rather than follow instructions. But outside of it, the endgame loop was narrow. Players hit the light level ceiling quickly and found limited paths forward. The tension Destiny created in 2014 was specific. The core feel, movement, gunplay, the weight of abilities was exceptional. The world was beautiful. The foundation was clearly capable of something great. But the game shipped feeling unfinished. Bungie's response came 6 weeks after launch, and it set the template for everything Destiny would become. Between December 2014 and September 2016, Destiny released 4 major expansions. Each one added content. Not all of them fixed the underlying problem. The Dark Below launched in December 2014, added a new story, a new strike and the Crota's End raid. It raised the light level cap. criticized for being thin relative to its $20 price point. House of Wolves, released in May 2015, added new story content and the Prison of Elders arena mode, notably shipped without a raid, a decision that frustrated the core audience significantly. The Taken King, released in September 2015, a $14 expansion that fundamentally rebuilt Destiny's structure, new subclasses for each class, a redesigned quest system replacing bounties, a new raid, King's Fall, widely considered the best in the game, new enemy faction, reworked UI. The Taken King was the version of Destiny the original should have been. Rise of Iron, launched in September 2016, a smaller expansion adding the Red of the Machine raid and a new social space at Valwinter's Peak. Solid content, but the community was aware Destiny 2 was coming. The Taken King's structural changes were significant. The quest system gave players directed progression paths rather than repetitive bounties. New subclasses, Sunbreaker Titan, Nightstalker Hunter, Stormcaller Warlock added a third elemental option per class. The Court of Oryx introduced public event-style encounters in a battle zone. King's Fall introduced mechanics that became raid benchmarks. The Touch of Menace exotic quest, jumping puzzles with death consequences, and encounter-specific roles for all 6 players. The Taken King moment mattered because it proved what Destiny could be when fully realized. Player counts surged back. The community that had drifted after launch returned. But Destiny's one engine had limits, and Bungie had a sequel to build. In September 2017, Destiny 2 launched, and the community split again. Destiny 2 launched September 6, 2017, built on a new engine, designed to be more accessible, broader audience in mind. The sequel launched on PS4, Xbox One, and for the first time PC, through Battle.net. First week players exceeded 1.2 million on PC alone within the first day, but the Destiny 1 endgame community felt the changes immediately. Weapon slot systems were redesigned. Power weapons and special weapons merged into one slot, removing the build flexibility veterans relied on. The endgame loop at launch was narrower than the Taken King had been. Crucible moved to a 4v4 format across all modes. Recovery came in stages. Forsaken launched in September 2018, widely considered the best content Destiny 2 produced. A new campaign built around consequence and tone, introducing the Dreaming City, a destination with a 3-week curse cycle that changed available content on rotation. New weapon slot system reintroduced via Armor 2.0 in the following season. Forsaken reset community sentiment significantly. Beyond Light, launched in November 2020, introduced Stasis, a new darkness-based subclass system, replacing the binary on-off ability model with a buildable fragment and aspect system. Europa has a destination, the Deepstone Crypt raid, concurrent with the controversial decision to vault entire planets from the game. Mercury, Mars, Io and Titan removed from the director permanently. The Witch Queen, launched in February 2022, introduced stand subclasses and a campaign with a selectable legendary difficulty that rewarded full gear sets on completion, considered the strongest campaign Bungie had produced since Forsaken. Destiny 2's arc between 2017 and 2022 was a cycle the community knew well by then. Disappointment at launch, recovery through expansion, a peak moment, then the wait for the next reset. But underneath the content cycle, a structural question had been building since 2017. What happens when a 10-year game reaches its 10th year? In 2022, Sony acquired Bungie for $3.6 billion. The studio retained independence, but the landscape had shifted. Lightfall, released in February 2023, landed to mixed reception. The campaign was criticized for weak narrative delivery, despite strong gameplay systems. The Stand subclass was well received. Root of Nightmare raids, reviewed positively, but story expectations for the penultimate chapter of a 10-year saga went unmet. The final shape released in June 2024, the conclusion of the Light and Darkness saga that had run since 2014. Critically, the strongest received expansion since Forsaken. The Pale Heart Destination, a new prismatic subclass combining all elements simultaneously, and a campaign that delivered the narrative closure the community had waited a decade for. Following the final shape, Bungie announced a restructure, layoffs affecting approximately 220 staff in July 2024. The post-Sega content model shifted toward episodes rather than full expansions. The episode model divided the year into 3 narrative arcs: Echoes, Revenant, and Hearsay, each running approximately 4 months, with weekly story content drops, a structural departure from the annual expansion model that had defined Destiny since 2015. By 2026, Test Me 2 had been live for nearly 9 years. The player counts of the 2018-2022 peak had contracted. The community was smaller, but deeply embedded. A game that had launched and finished in 2014 had produced some of the most mechanically sophisticated cooperative content in the medium across its lifetime. The 10-year story was told. What came next was a different question entirely. From a $500 million publishing deal in 2010 to a 10-year saga concluded in 2024, Destiny never fully became the game it promised to be at launch, and it never stopped being worth playing. That tension defined everything. The gunplay that never lost its feel. The raids that set a standard cooperative design still reaches for. The community that rebuilt itself after every reset. Destiny wasn't a perfect game. It was a platform that kept asking its players to come back and kept finding ways to justify the answer. That's what this game was. New case files release every Monday, Wednesday and Friday.